Alright, welcome back folks to WrestleRant, where I give my review of all the pay-per-views that I watch on the WWE Network. The next couple of weeks, or the next week and a half anyway. Today's Saturday, today's devoted to the Extreme Rules 2012 review, tomorrow 2013, and then Tuesday 2014, before we move into my reviews of Judgment Day, the old classic pay-per-views as seen on the WWE Network. Although Extreme Rules is come and gone to the 2015 show, very enjoyable edition in my opinion. Today we're breaking down the 2012 installment. If I had to rank my favorite Extreme Rules events of all time, this would probably be number 2. A really good show, start to finish. Review starts right now with the opening match. I don't even bother discussing the pre-show matches. They're available on YouTube. They are not available in the WWE Network pay-per-view. They're not available on the WWE Network, of course, unless you're watching one of the newer pay-per-views from 2014 onward. But it was Santino Marella versus The Miz anyway. The Miz went from headlining Extreme Rules the year before for the WWE title in the main event to going to the pre-show and losing a United States Championship matchup to Santino Marella. How the mighty have fallen. But nevertheless, though, kicking off the actual show, Randy Orton versus Kane, a Falls Count Anywhere matchup, and a feud that I thought was pretty underrated. Now, it was obvious they threw this together at the last possible second, and I talked about this in my WrestleMania 28 review a couple weeks ago. Cheap plug if you want to check it back out here on the channel. I reviewed it about a month or two ago. But I thought the feud itself was very underrated, in that they kind of harpered back to an earlier segment that I thought they should have acknowledged. It was a street fight on an episode of SmackDown from like mid-2011. Kane kind of dropped his monster shtick, so to speak, to shake the hand and show respect of Randy Orton when he came back a couple months later. He turned heel, whatever, the rest is history. But he would target Randy Orton. He beat him clean at WrestleMania. So that was kind of the part of the feud that I enjoyed. The thing with Randy Orton and CM Punk, while their matches were better than the matches that Orton had with Kane this year in 2012, the feud itself was better, in that Randy Orton won all of his matches with CM Punk on the road to WrestleMania 2011 on the road to WrestleMania 27. This year, Kane at least already had a win over Randy Orton, so it meant more when Orton eventually beat him. They had a pretty good no DQ match on I think it was a subsequent episode of SmackDown after WrestleMania, leading to this, to the rubber match on Extreme Rules, or at Extreme Rules, Falls Count Anywhere rules. And I love these kind of matches where they actually live up to the stipulation. That's why I kind of enjoyed Dean Ambrose versus Luke Harper this year. And that, granted, they could have done more with it and showing more footage. That's another discussion for another day, another forum. But, what I liked about that matchup was the fact that they kind of went out of their elements. They went outside of the arena, they went to the backstage area, and that's exactly what Orton and Kane did on this show. They took it to the crowd, they took it to the outside, almost exactly what Randy Orton and, Cody Rhodes and what Rey Mysterio did the year prior in their really good match. This match was no different. I love the nice little touch that Randy Orton and Kane went backstage, and they went to the viewing area where like the losers are watching the pay-per-view, or the guys that aren't even on the show are watching the show. And you see Zack Ryder there, who helps out Randy Orton at one point. And of course, Zack Ryder and Kane having their long history from late 2012, or late 2011 onward into early 2012, kind of helping Randy Orton and beating him down, only for him to get choked by Kane, but he did not get attacked before Randy Orton made the save. So that was a nice little touch. But for them to take it to the back, I thought was pretty cool. They made the most of the stipulation, kind of going up and down the aisles. And mind you, this show took place, or emanated from Chicago, a red-hot crowd, one of my favorite crowds in wrestling today. They're always awesome. This show is no exception. A great crowd on this show. So they kind of take it all over the arena. They eventually go back into the ring, where Orton lays out Kane with an RKO on the steel chair ring in the middle of the ring to get the victory. So a pretty good opener to the show, with Orton ending victorious. So a really good matchup between those two, and a nice little way of kind of putting the final nail in the coffin, so to speak, no pun intended, of this feud. So an underrated feud, underrated matches, and Kane does not have the best matches in 2015, but when he was working with Orton, they had a very nice string of solid matches for that, from WrestleMania to Extreme Rules 2012 on this show. So up next, we have a filler match between Brodus Clay and Dolph Ziggler. If my memory serves me correctly, they had a match on Raw on the week before this, on the Raw before this show, that ended maybe in like disqualification, like a minute or something like that, leading to the match on this show. And the 2012 installment of Extreme Rules kind of started the trend of not all matches on the show being Extreme Rules, or being held under extreme circumstances, or stipulations or whatever. And this match had none of that. I know it was a filler match, but they could have done more, make it no DQ or something. I know it would not have mattered much. It was only a 4-minute match. but it would have made it a little bit more memorable. I mean, they worked well. I mean, Brodus Clay was a very limited gimmick, and I was a huge fan of it. I mean, I thought they were going somewhere with it. He was undefeated for maybe 5 or 6 solid months, and the biggest issue with Brodus Clay that they never ended up going anywhere with him. They had his undefeated streak squashed by, I think it was the Big Show, and like a couple months after this, but, you know, it was a shame to see Dolph Ziggler, a guy who was contending for the WWE title only mere months before this on one of the grandest shows of the year at Royal Rumble, and then to be subjected to a brief squash match, you know, being thrown out there, being fed to Brodus Clay in 4 minutes at Extreme Rules. So it's obvious they were kind of pushing him and shit to make sure, to see if, you know, how he would do. They kind of do that with a lot of people. I think it's dumb, but I could see why they do it. You know, it was only a couple months later that he ended up entering world title contention and winning the Money in the Bank ladder match and having a amazing rest of 2012. So this would only be the last time that Ziggler was kind of like a jobber for Brodus Clay, thankfully. But the match was fine. I was surprised they were not as more rebellious as they were. I mean, some people were, you know, cheering for Brodus Clay when he came out. Dolph Ziggler, a very pro IWC guy, and Chicago treated him very favorably, but I thought they would chant Brodus sucks or something, and they would side with Dolph Ziggler. Thankfully, that was not the case on this show. You know, like I said, Brodus Clay, cool gimmick, cool guy, but they never ended up doing anything with him. He was much better off as a heel, as we see now in TNA as Tyrus, I think his name is. He's so much better in that role, and why they dragged out the fucking Funkasaurus shit for as long as they did is beyond me. The guy was so much more useful in the role as a heel, as seen in those video packages before he debuted. Whatever. But yeah, fine match, fine filler match. Ziggler taking the bump of the night with, I don't know if it was the bump of the night, but he took a pretty crazy headbutt from Brodus Clay, and he sold it like $1 million, which I thought was awesome. So a fine filler match from those two. Up next, a tables match for the Intercontinental Championship with the defending champion Big Show taking on Cody Rhodes. So this feud for me, I wasn't a huge fan of it going into WrestleMania, and like I said, I talked about most of these feuds in my WrestleMania 28 review. And the feud, I got where they were coming from. Big Show never got his WrestleMania moment. Cody Rhodes was one of the longest reigning Intercontinental Champions in recent history. And they kind of had that dynamic. Big Show got his big win at WrestleMania. And that, to me, although I wasn't a fan of the feud before that WrestleMania, that was where the feud died for me. That was where it fell flat. Because all the subsequent weeks was Big Show distracting Cody Rhodes in his matches, and Cody Rhodes couldn't win a match to save his life. This was a guy that was holding that Intercontinental Championship with pride, honor, and dignity. Maybe not all three of those things, but he was a credible Intercontinental Champion for the 7 or 8 months that he held that belt for. And it kind of tossed all of that away when he lost the Big Show in like 5 or 6 minutes at WrestleMania, and then have him, you know, be treated like an enhancement talent in the weeks after WrestleMania. So no one took Cody Rhodes seriously as a threat to Big Show on this show. They gave the stipulation, they gave it a tables match on like the pre-show, so they obviously did not give two shits about this match. Thankfully, it was only 4 minutes long, and I say thankfully because, you know, tables matches can either be really hit or miss, and they had a decent match, but I can't tell you I remember much about it. I only watched the show a couple days ago. You know, it was only 4 minutes long, and they kept it short, sweet, and to the point, and I love the finish because Cody Rhodes came off as, you know, a brilliant heel. You know, he didn't cheat. He had Big Show. I think he pushed Big Show off the apron, and when Big Show, he stepped off the apron to kind of catch his fall, he put his foot down, and his foot went right through the table, granting Cody Rhodes the victory to become the new Intercontinental Champion. Now, not that I didn't enjoy it, well, I didn't, but I didn't get the commentators saying that Cody Rhodes cheated, it didn't count. It might have been Michael Cole, you know, he was the voice of reason when he was a heel, which is not the way that it should be. But, you know, Jerry Lawler was saying, you know, he cheated, Big Show should have won, whatever, it's a technicality. He went through the table. It's a loss. I mean, it doesn't matter what body part goes to the table, you still lose. And Big Show lost this match fair and square. Then following the matchup to a chorus of boos, which I thought was hilarious, Big Show picks up Cody Rhodes, tosses him through a table, I think in the ring, and then tosses him through a table at ringside too. So Cody Rhodes taking an insane bump there. It looked pretty unsafe, and it was a great visual. But like I said, it kind of buried Cody Rhodes before he even became Intercontinental Champion again. The match was nothing noteworthy. I was glad Cody Rhodes won back the belt, but it would be another 2 or 3 weeks before he would drop it back to Christian anyway, which I liked. But, the whole booking of Cody Rhodes, to me, even years later, and they kind of caught fire with him again in 2013 after a fucking year and a half of, marginalizing this guy. They finally caught fire with him when he turned babyface, but of course that didn't last long before they did the whole thing with Goldust, which was awesome, but I still say to this day that Cody Rhodes deserves so much more than what he's getting right now. The guy's an amazing talent, could be world champion. There's world champion written all over him. They just fucking give this guy so many dumb gimmicks that that he makes the most of. But losing to R-Truth, this past weekend Raw in the King of the Ring finals, really, or in the King of the Ring quarterfinals, whatever, in like 2 or 3 minutes in a match that no one cared about. It's ridiculous. But that all really started for me at WrestleMania when he lost the Big Show in like 5 or 6 minutes. Big Show should not have been the person to end Cody Rhodes' historic long reign as Intercontinental Champion. And of course, this match was really nothing of note. I didn't enjoy it. I mean, it was a cool visual. Like I said, the crowd loved it when Cody Rhodes got tossed to the table. I mean, part of them loved it. They were kind of cheering because it was violence, but at the same time, they were booing him because they like Cody Rhodes, and they got a big pop when he won the belt. But again, I mean, the Big Show came off like a complete heel. Maybe it made sense because he ended up turning heel anyway. A few weeks later at Over the Limit in that atrocious match with John Cena and John Laurinaitis, so maybe that's what they were planting the seeds for. But it kind of just ended Cody Rhodes' reign before it even began. He was never really a threat after that point. But up next, what we're getting into the good stuff on this show, or the better stuff anyway. 2 out of 3 count falls match for the World Heavyweight Championship with Sheamus defending against Daniel Bryan in a rematch from WrestleMania. So, of course, up to this point, these guys had been slighted. They're instant classic. They should have gotten to WrestleMania 27, and they should have gotten to WrestleMania 28, and they didn't. One match was bumped to the pre-show and never really even ended up getting started. I think it ended like a fucking no contest or something. And then the following year, of course, and that match ending in 18 seconds when Sheamus quickly beat Daniel Bryan to win the World Heavyweight Championship. So we arrived at this destination, and as shitty as the 18 seconds thing was, and it was disappointing at that time, and a lot of people were pissed, could have been a near-perfect show, WrestleMania 28, although it's still one of my favorite and one of the best WrestleManias in recent memory, it could have been better had that match actually happened. But on the bright side, though, everything happens for a reason. Not always in WWE, but it ended up working out in the long term. And that Daniel Bryan took that loss, he ran with it, he became 10 times more aggressive. As we saw in this show, he broke away from AJ, who a lot of people thought would serve as a factor, the finish of this matchup, in which she would not. They would show her backstage before the match began, and the commentators alluded to her, but she never showed up during the match. And she wouldn't really get involved with the whole Daniel Bryan story again until about a month or 2 later when they did the whole Bermuda Triangle, Love Triangle thing with AJ, Kane, Punk, and Daniel Bryan. But, a straight-up wrestling match between Bryan and Sheamus. And like I said, everything happened for a reason. Again, not always in WWE, but in this case, it ended up working out for the better. They ended up working an amazing match in front of a great crowd in Chicago. It was very pro-Daniel Bryan, obviously. Even though Sheamus won, they didn't boo the shit out of him after he won. He earned their respect in putting on a tremendous performance. I thought this was a fantastic match. I don't want to say tired formula, but it was pretty predictable in that, Daniel Bryan getting himself disqualified in the first fall, but it would end up working out in that in the second fall, he would lock in the label lock, tire out Sheamus, who would not tap out. He would pass out, giving Daniel Bryan the second fall. Leading into the third fall, and almost instantly after Sheamus got back up and he was attended to by medical personnel, as soon as he got up, he hit Daniel Bryan quickly. It was a boot. I don't think it was exactly a bro kick, but they called it as such on commentary. And people were like, oh no, not again. And then Bryan kicked out. So I thought it was pretty phenomenal. And Sheamus locking in not the Celtic Cross, the Celtic Cloverleaf, I think, in what she calls it, the Texas Cloverleaf. I think he calls it the Celtic Cloverleaf. I'm not exactly sure. But he locked that in at one point during the matchup. So a lot of amazing action between these two, as only you would expect, and one of the best matches, in my opinion, of 2012. This show is filled with great matches that would be known as some of the best matches of the year, and I'll get to that at the end. But, just a tremendous performance by both guys, and for a lot of people, a lot of people were very pro-Daniel Bryan by this point in time, he finally had the opportunity to have that show-stealing match. And the guy by this point had been with WWE for about a year or two. And, up to this point, a great wrestler. He had a lot of really good matches. One of my favorite matches of his with The Miz and Night of Champions 2010. Another tremendous performance at SummerSlam 2011. But none of those matches would really be seen as the show-stealing match of those particular shows. For this matchup, you could call it the best match of the night. There's a lot of, split in between. Some people say Sheamus and Bryan. Others say Punk and Jericho. Other people say Cena and Lesnar. You could really go either way. But this was the one true match that Sheamus and Bryan proved what they were capable of. Just a fantastic performance all the way around, from not only an in-ring action standpoint, not only from a ring standpoint, but from a storytelling standpoint too. With Sheamus being, he was always dominating people left and right, the Cena of SmackDown, whatever, that's what he was being booked as such. But during this matchup, though, he was the underdog. Daniel Bryan was in complete control for almost all of it. And, far too often, we get the whole, DQ in the first fall, heel wins the second fall, face wins the third fall. We get that a lot. But nowadays, more often, I saw this on NXT recently in the match between Breeze and Itami and a few others. Far too often are the first falls only like a minute or two long. So we're expected to believe, although their past matches went 10 or 15 minutes, the first fall ended in 2 minutes. It's something like that I just don't get, and I think it's dumb. And it should really be 3 separate matches. And the second fall happened quickly after the first. And in that case, I didn't mind it because the first fall took a while, and this matchup ended up going almost over 20 minutes. One of the longest matches on the show, and deservedly so. So, an amazing match. Like I said, that would make Daniel Bryan, even in defeat, the guy would go on to have amazing matches with CM Punk the following month at Over the Limit and beyond for the spring of 2012. So just amazing stuff all the way around. Really, really enjoyed it. Up next, a quick buffer match between Ryback and 2 local athletes named Aaron Relic and Jay Hatton, who repeatedly said over and over, 1 or 2 is better than 1, or 2 is greater than 1, just over and over and over, relentlessly. I guess as a way to build up heat for them, Chicago could not have cared less. Ryback got the whole Goldberg treatment when he came out, unsurprisingly so. This was only weeks after he arrived on the scene, so he was still doing the squash matches. I was hoping he would do the double shell shock, but I don't think he would debut that for another few weeks. I think he debuted that in like an episode of SmackDown or something. Then he would do it all the time. But on this show, he just took out one guy with a backpack stunner, I think it was, and then the other guy with the shell shocked. So making quick work of Aaron Relic and Jay Hatton. Quick squash match. Again, not technically a Extreme Rules match, and that would kind of be the this show would kind of serve as the precedent for not all matches at Extreme Rules being Extreme Rules, which I think is stupid. Then why bother selling that stipulation? But it is what it is. Kind of brought people down after the great World Heavyweight Championship matchup. So it served its purpose in that sense. Up next, the Chicago Street Fight for the WWE Championship between CM Punk and Chris Jericho. So I mentioned in my WrestleMania 28 review how much I love this feud and the series of matches that they had. Punk won almost every single match, and I would have given Jericho one win here or there, whether it was him winning the Rumble or the Chamber or whatever. In the end, it would make sense because they wanted to build CM Punk. Whether it was long-term or not, I have no idea, but they wanted to build Punk up as the longest-reigning WWE champion in modern history. So having him drop the belt here or at any point during the feud would have stopped that. But still, though, I feel like they could have done more to make it more meaningful and give Jericho more heat, I guess, coming into this matchup from an in-ring standpoint. He didn't really have much credibility based off his wins and losses, but they did end up making up for it in terms of the segments they did and the sobriety test that Punk took in the Raw before this show, which I honestly did not really enjoy. A lot of people are very... it's a critically acclaimed segment from a lot of people, from what I've seen anyway. A lot of people loved it. Personally, I didn't really care for it. I thought it was fine, but I just thought it was dumb because you know that CM Punk is not going to break being straight edge, whatever. But still, I thought the series of matches and the feud that they had was phenomenal, and by far the best match that they had was on this show in the Chicago Street Fight. And Jericho has talked about this before in his book and on podcasts, and I think Punk has maybe mentioned it here or there before as well, in that the Chicago Street Fight, much like Ambrose and Harper, but they're kind of already addressed the occasion anyway, regardless of whether it's a street fight or not. Punk came out wearing jeans, Jericho came out wearing jeans, and it's the small touches like those that kind of make the matches more memorable and meaningful and kind of make it feel like an actual street fight. In this day and age, and I've been asked this a million times before, what's the difference between a street fight, a no DQ match, a no holds barred match? There is no fucking difference. Technically a no holds barred match should be a match where there is no holds barred. Like Randy Orton should be able to bring back the punt kick. Or like in TNA, in a match between Sting and I think it was Bully Ray, where Bully Ray brought back the pile driver, which has been a banned move forever. For at least for the last couple of years anyway. So those are what those different stipulations mean to me. So when you do those matches all the time and they're always kind of the same, you do a street fight on Raw, but it feels like an actual match. We had a fucking street fight between Punk and Ryback, and it really made no difference as to whether it was a no DQ match or a no holds barred, whatever. This match lived up to that stipulation. They both came out wearing street clothes. I thought it was awesome. Of course, like I said before, the show taking place in Chicago, so that great hometown feel for CM Punk, in which they mentioned on commentary that it was only less than a year before this show that Punk had left Chicago, that very same arena, the Allstate Arena, and became the new WWE Champion when he walked out of the company as the new WWE Champion, unemployed, in my favorite match of all time. So I love the little history lesson there from the commentators acknowledging that, and how could they not? I mean, it's fucking Chicago. He's so beloved there, CM Punk is. So that was awesome to see that he has his own little cult following. And he had his family in the crowd as well, in which his sister would actually get involved. Jericho went over to her. I think he knocked out Punk at ringside. So Jericho went over to Punk's little sister. I forgot what her name was, because he mentioned in some promo, or Shalina, I think her name is. I know they mentioned on the Punk DVD too. But anyway, he went over to her, kind of yelling in her face, and then she would slap him back, and people were gasping. It was a pretty cool moment, and Punk would stop Jericho from going back after her. And they would incorporate Singapore canes, and Punk jumping an amazing spot, doing the flying elbow off the top rope to the commentating table to Jericho. Great spot. Punk's elbows aren't always spot on. Like, I know he's no Macho Man Randy Savage or anything, or a Shawn Michaels, but they were pretty good. I mean, it got pretty lazy by the end of his run when he was hurting and stuff, but at the prime of his career, around this period in time when he was WWE Champion, he was hitting great elbows. This was one of them. Jericho was through the table, trading finishers. The final few minutes of the match were very, very exciting, with the constant reversals and the walls of Jericho, the Anaconda Vice, GTS, Codebreaker, back and forth, the momentum went. And then finally, Punk slamming Jericho right into the exposed turnbuckle in the corner of the ring, following it up with the GTS to get the 1-2-3. So an amazing match. Really, really enjoyed it. Like I said before, the best match these two had in their series of matches in the first half of 2012, which is saying something, because I thought the WrestleMania match was really good. I thought the if you get DQ'd, you lose your title stipulation was dumb, especially to add it at the last minute. And that kind of took away from the match more than added to it. But on the show, they were allowed to not only embrace the wrestling standpoint of it, kind of have an all-out wrestling match at the end, but they were also able to make it into a brawl, which was perfect and most fitting for this feud, for this rivalry, because Punk desperately wanted to get his hands on Jericho coming into the show, who had attacked him time and time again. I thought it was awesome. Perfectly fitting match for this perfect, awesome feud, fantastic feud. Punk comes out of it victorious. There's awesome stuff all around. So we get to our second last match of the night, the Divas Championship matchup. So 6 days earlier on Raw, Nikki Bella, who had been rumored, along with Brie, of course, the Bella twins collectively, had been rumored to have been leaving the WWE after their contract expired around this time of the pay-per-view. Nikki Bella beat Beth Phoenix in shocking fashion to become the new Divas Champion. Now, this whole thing was a lot more convoluted than it needed to be, in that Beth Phoenix, well, one of the reasons why she lost the belt in the first place, I guess, in her match with Nikki, was that they kind of played up that she got injured, but she was never actually injured. And I'm thinking, okay, so Beth will drop the belt on Raw, which initially I was pissed about because I really wanted her to break the record as the longest reigning Divas Champion in history. And AJ Lee would eventually do that, of course, a couple of years ago last year. But I really wanted it to be Beth Phoenix a couple of years ago, back in 2012. And so they have her get injured. So I'm thinking, okay, so if they're going to do a mystery opponent for Nikki, and why they gave her the belt to begin with, only days before her contract expired, I really have no idea. Maybe they wanted to give her a token run as champion before she left the company. I have no idea. It was kind of pointless. It was only 6 days long. She's Divas Champion now. She's 10 times better than she was 3 years ago. The reign as a character, wrestler, everything. But I'm thinking, okay, so they have Beth get injured, and she dropped it to a fellow heel too, which made no sense, but whatever. So they drop it to Nikki because Beth is quote-unquote injured, and they have Karma come back, and it made sense. So the Bella Twins leave. Karma comes in, who had returned at the 2012 Royal Rumble, and around this time we really had no idea what the situation was with her. So I'm waiting for her to come back, whether it was at Elimination Chamber or at WrestleMania or the night after WrestleMania, whatever. She never ended up coming back, of course, as we would soon learn. But around this time, it made perfect sense. You don't give away Beth and Karma at the pay-per-view. You have Karma come in, take the belt from Nikki Bella, kind of tying up the loose end from the year prior when Karma, when she announced her pregnancy and left, she said that she would one day get her revenge against the Bella twins. So before they left, they would tie up that loose end, and bada bing, bada boom. You get that, tied in, you get that loose end tied up. So I thought that was awesome. Not very often do we get long-term booking in WWE. So when we do get it, I commend it. I commend WWE for doing it. So I thought that would have been awesome. So instead, Nikki Bella comes out, just like I thought, like everyone thought. Open challenge, Beth can't compete, blah, 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 blah. And instead of Karma, we get Layla instead. And I was equally excited. I was still happy to see Layla. It had been about a year, almost exactly, since we had last seen her. She got injured almost right after her match with Michelle McCool at Extreme Rules 2011. Coming back from that injury, winning the belt in a few minutes. The match was fine. Layla's a good worker. Nikki was not ever, she wasn't good at that time. She's gotten a lot better since then. The match was pretty throwaway for 2 or 3 minutes. The crowd didn't really care. They popped generously for Layla winning the belt and coming back or whatever. But it was clear they wanted Karma. At one point, I think during Nikki's promo before Layla came out, the crowd was chanting, "We want Karma." So not a huge surprise there. Still, though, I feel like Karma would have been perfectly placed in this slot, and I think she tweeted something before the matchup too, saying, "I'm here, ready to give these girls. They're about to get their comeuppance," whatever it was. And a lot of people are thinking, Karma's coming back finally, perfect way to book it. And then with the belt on Karma, you tie up that loose end with the Bella twins. And then Beth Phoenix is in chase mode, and they're feuding over the Divas Championship leading up to a match at the next pay-per-view, SummerSlam, whatever. It was perfect, And then they didn't do that for whatever reason. And Karma, I'm assuming they didn't do it because I guess the reports at that time were that Karma was in no condition to compete, that she was coming off the miscarriage of her child, a very sad and unfortunate situation, but she wasn't getting back into the shape that she was before. She wasn't motivated. Whatever the reason was, I heard there were issues, like attitude issues from her, which I don't believe are true for a single second. I think those were complete bullshit. But I do believe that she was probably not in the best state, both maybe physically and definitely mentally, to come back. And who can blame her? She just had her, a miscarriage of her child, so they couldn't rush her back. And they eventually came to terms on her release that summer, I think right after Raw 1000 in late July. And it sucked because I really wanted to see Karma do more in WWE. And had a lot more potential to do a lot of amazing things had it not been for that unfortunate incident. So that's why they didn't do that angle. But then in that case, then why even bother doing that at all? Why not just have Beth break the record and then have Layla, be put in chase mode for the Divas Championship, for them to go out there and for Layla to win the belt, no reaction. Like I said, she got a generous pop. And that was it. The Bella twins were gone the next night, and then Beth was fucking, wasted for the rest of her run before she left the company later that year. So the whole booking of this I thought was just asinine. So I didn't really enjoy that. Cool to see Layla back, but for what could have been instead, the booking could have been absolutely perfect. The timing just wasn't right. They couldn't do it, but still, the whole handling of the situation was just very, very strange, to say the least. So we get to the main event, the Extreme Rules match between John Cena and Brock Lesnar. Brock Lesnar's first match back in 8 years. His first match since WrestleMania 20 and his infamous bout with and his infamous encounter with Goldberg at WrestleMania 20. And this was anything but. This was the exact opposite of that matchup. I don't think there were fears from people as to whether Brock could still go. I think a lot of people, myself included, were very excited to see how Brock would fare now coming back and incorporating his UFC style into the Extreme Rules match. And again, perfectly fitting of the stipulation. I thought the stipulation was perfect because for the weeks leading up to this show, the feud wasn't great. When Brock came back, one of my favorite returns of all time, the follow-up was not there. Paul Heyman was nowhere to be seen until right after Extreme Rules, because after the whole contract signing with Laurinaitis and Lesnar fell through and Lesnar's mic skills were complete shit, they ended up bringing back Paul Heyman because they obviously desperately needed him. So Lesnar's promos were just not cutting it, and I don't know, it was just very weird. But the brawls they did have, though, were very, very good. And Cena bleeding at one point, and Lesnar would waste no time in this matchup and opening up and blooding up Cena. I thought that was great, a nice touch. Whether it was done intentionally or not, I'm not sure, but Lesnar wasted really no time and hammering Cena with those elbows to the forehead, and Cena was bloodied up for the rest of the matchup. So a great visual. And they tried to wipe it up at one point, but for the most part, Cena was wearing a crimson mask, as Gordon Soley would say, for the remainder of the matchup. But they really went all out. I mean, there's really no surprise. It comes as no surprise that this match is regarded as one of the best of 2012, because these guys went out there and gave it their all. Mostly Brock Lesnar. I mean, John Cena took the punishment like a champ, but Brock Lesnar was a fucking beast on this show. He still is, regardless. Brock Lesnar is a fucking beast, period. But especially on this show, in his first match back, saying to people, fuck the match I had with Goldberg 8 years ago. I am back and I'm ready to rip shit up. Just dominating John Cena with steel chairs, fucking launching himself outside of the ring. It was incredible. And John Cena held his own too, but this was the prison beating. As we saw John Cena at SummerSlam, this was like 10 times worse. The only difference was that John Cena won this match, and I'll get to that in a second, but the matchup itself was fantastic. It wasn't a great back-and-forth matchup, and it didn't need to be. It was amazing because it was something different. With Brock Lesnar, no wonder, this is no understatement. This is no overstatement, excuse me. This is not emphasizing anything. This is the exact truth. Brock Lesnar absolutely annihilating John Cena in this matchup. Made for a great visual, a great fucking prison beating. And then in the end, in one of the dumbest decisions made in recent history, if not ever, John Cena, after getting little to no offense and on Brock Lesnar for almost all of the matchup, comes in, hits Lesnar with the steel chain at one point, and ends up following it up with an AA, with an attitude adjustment, on a set of steel steps in the middle of the ring, pins him on top of the steps, which I don't think is... You can't do that, whatever. But Cena gets the 1, 2, 3, picks up the win. And, the women fans and the children were cheering in the crowd, but the male fans weren't even booing. They were just shocked, because it seemed like a shoo-in that Lesnar would win. It was his first match back. Why would you make the guy fucking lose? Brock Lesnar, of all people. For anybody, you should not make their debut match or their return match a loss. Look at Sting. That's the same reason why I thought there was a chance Sting might lose, because of what we saw on this fucking show when they ruined the outcome. And all these years later, it still makes absolutely no sense that that John Cena won on this show. Why? Why did Cena need to win on this show? It made absolutely no sense. It didn't make sense with the story they were trying to tell. Because, in the weeks leading up to this, the whole Edge promo on the Raw before Extreme Rules, he confronted John Cena, and he said, you need to fucking wake up. You got your ass handed to you by The Rock at WrestleMania. Brock Lesnar beat you up, to beat the shit out of you after the night after WrestleMania. You lost to Lord Tensai. What the hell is wrong with you? And that kind of served as a wake-up call to John Cena. But the redemption story that they were trying to tell with him should not have been, wrapped up this quickly. He fucking ended up losing to John Laurinaitis, of all people, the following month. I know that was to keep his job, but why do that at all? I would have rather seen Cena and fucking Tensai in the main event than Cena and Laurinaitis. And I'll get to that when I get to that, if I review that show down the line. But just the decision all these years later still makes absolutely no sense to me. It didn't make sense then. It doesn't make sense now. Lesnar moved into a feud with Triple H. And, in this time, in the last few years, since Lesnar initially returned to the company in 2012, he has lost, by pinfall anyway, he lost that another dumb match to John Cena at Night of Champions. But they ended up having another match, at SummerSlam, and he beat him there. But anyway, going back to what I was saying before, in the last 3 years since Lesnar came back, he has suffered only 2 losses by pinfall. One by Triple H at WrestleMania 29, which I kind of got. They wanted to give him his win back after he beat him at SummerSlam, and the stipulation that he had to retire, which was dumb because we knew that wasn't going to happen. I kind of got that. This makes absolutely no sense. Again, in the moment, in retrospect, I don't get it. If I ever got the chance to interview Vince or whoever was booking this match, I would love to know why they put over Brock. And I don't want to complain too much because, all these years later, Brock is doing just fine. The guy ended a streak of all things, so a lot of people don't even remember this loss, especially after he beat the shit out of John Cena at SummerSlam, just last year or so. But still, though, an amazing match despite the awful, awful finish. The match itself was fantastic. And the post-match promo, too, made also very little sense, also in retrospect. I mentioned this in my 10 things you forgot about Extreme Rules article for What Culture last week, and I put this in number 1, and people probably remember it, but after the matchup, John Cena took a mic, and he was saying, I gotta go on vacation, I'm hurt, my arm is killing me, despite this being fake, he just was really open about it with it being, he didn't say it was fake, but he said, we put on a show for you guys tonight, we actually do really get hurt, blah, 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 blah. He was selling his arm injury, but the guy should have been taken out on a stretcher or something. He was no-selling the injuries that he took by Brock Lesnar throughout the duration of this bout, and, telling people to drive home safe and all this other shit. And that also made very little sense, as it was the next night on Raw, he was right back. No more than 24 hours later was he back on Raw, doing his thing. And I know he had his arm in a sling for maybe a week or two, but other than that, he didn't take a vacation or speaking out against when he shouldn't have, when he shouldn't have, whatever. Why even bother saying something like that, It got people's hopes up that Cena would be gone for a few weeks. We would get a refresher, like, oh, Cena's going to be gone, whatever. And we didn't end up getting that. He was back the very next night, and he was back for the very next pay-per-view against fucking John Laurinaitis, as I mentioned before. So, very strange finish. A strange conclusion to the show, to say the least. But everything else before it, though, really, really enjoyed. Coming as no surprise as to why this is one of my second favorite Extreme Rules events of all time. Some of the matches I didn't really care too much for. Rhodes and Big Show was, okay. It was mediocre at best. It was only 4 minutes long, which it should have been. But in the moment of Cody Rhodes winning was kind of hindered, kind of overshadowed by Big Show beating him up afterwards, which is a great visual, but again, didn't need to happen. But the rest of the show, though, filler matches aside, I thought Orton and Kane, very entertaining opener. In the top 3 main events, over-delivered. Not in a bad way, but they exceeded expectations. Sheamus and Bryan, Punk and Jericho, and Cena and Lesnar. And as I said earlier, that's why this show is remembered so fondly, is because the top 3 matches on this show were not only the best bouts, on this show. They were 3 of the best matches of the motherfucking year. I don't know where you would put them. I think I put them in my top 10 when I made my article that year for best matches of 2012 in WWE. I think I put all 3 of them in the top 10. Now that I think about it, but just all 3 matches were phenomenal. And you add that to the fact, in addition to the fact, the Chicago crowd was rowdy and great as usual, not rebelling against anything, but they were enjoying the action, made for an electric environment. This made for a very, very enjoyable show on the whole that I would absolutely recommend going back and watching on the WWE Network. An awesome show. Like I said before, even though Extreme Rules 2015 has come and gone, there is no reason why you should not go back and watch this very show. This great stuff all around. Really, really enjoyed it. And as I said before, you can catch it on the WWE Network for a low sum of, well, nothing, because it's free again for the fucking month of May. So you can go back and watch it for free on the WWE Network. Would very much suggest that you do so. Just say 2 thumbs up for the show. Really, really enjoyed it. One of my favorite pay-per-views of all time. I'd either put it in my top 10 or top 15 favorite pay-per-views ever. So, that being said, folks, thanks for listening, thanks for watching, always appreciate it. You can find me on Facebook at facebook.com/graham.gsm.matthews. You can find me on Twitter at WrestleRant, and also make sure to share, subscribe, like, and comment on this video. Always appreciate the support. Make sure to subscribe, and make sure to stay tuned until tomorrow when I'm back with my review of Extreme Rules 2013. And also, of course, you can check out my full reviews of Extreme Rules 2015 and every Extreme Rules pay-per-view dating back to 2012, this very show. My written review of it on nextairwrestling.net from what were my thoughts on it at that time, not 3 years later. You can get my thoughts on that written version on nextairwrestling.net. Until next time, folks, have a great weekend, and I'll catch you guys tomorrow for my review of Extreme Rules 2013.